Hello, so welcome to the latest of AQR's webinars, and we're lucky to have three top people to have a conversation with. We have a familiar face, which is Siamack Salari, who's a leading expert in ethnographic research. We have Katrin Horn, who is a commercial semiotician, and we have Valeria Maltoni, who is a strategic consultant who helps enterprise brands, technology companies, and professional services firms prepare for a wider range of outcomes tomorrow. We're here to talk about Not Everyday Life, which I was really interested to read about when it launched. I still haven't done my interview. I'm going to wait for phase 2. But I contacted Siamack at that stage and said I'd be really interested in talking about it because it looks like a novel enterprise, and I'd like to chart its origins, its progression, and its outcome. And I don't think even he knew what it was going to become, because it looks like a monster in many ways, that it's sort of grown. So let's start right from the start, which is, can I ask you, what were its origins for the people who don't know?
The origins were the very early stages of the lockdown, me waking up one morning and thinking, well, knowing that a lot of our community had lost their jobs, or if they had companies and consultancies, clients had either cut them loose or paused projects. There were a lot of people suffering quite a bit. And it was a simple idea. Let's see if I can't put a report out there, do an interview, drop it into a pot, ask someone else to do an interview and drop it into a pot, and then they can look at my interview and I can look at their interview, and then we get a third person to do it. And I remember at the time thinking, I'll just ask a few friends on LinkedIn if they liked the idea. All of them came back to me immediately saying, what a great idea, just do it, just put it out there, put it on LinkedIn, post it, let's see what happens. And I remember getting to 50 people asking to join this community, to register, and thinking, wow, this is incredible. You know, I didn't even expect that. And of course, now we're over 1,000 people and getting 10, 15 new people registering every single day from all over the world. But the important thing to state is, it was for us, right? There's no client, there's no sort of external agenda. It was really just for us. Let's find some topics to explore. Let's do some interesting work, and then we can plow it back into, fold it back into the community, who can use it however they want to and take advantage.
So, how many countries have been involved?
We've had reports, I checked this morning because I knew we were going to ask the question, from 42 countries.
Wow. So I have seen, and all of us have seen, I think, loads of research coming in since the pandemic started. But I'd be interested in how you think this one differs from the many others that are out there around the world currently, both in terms of format, response, and maybe the themes.
Well, first of all, we're researchers. We're all qualitative researchers. Hang on, let me just pull back from that. We're not all qualitative researchers. We have quantitative researchers. We have academics. We have a lot of client side who have, I shouldn't really use that word, who've kind of crept in using their personal email addresses. But I know that there are whole departments from FMCG companies who are among us. We've got people from General Motors in the US. We've got people from Danone. We've got people from lots of household companies that you'd recognize. So I think, but I should also confess to the fact that I haven't really looked around to see what else is happening out there, but I can't imagine there's anything happening on the scale that we're going at. and the scope that we're going at. So that's the number of registered people. We've got 330 reports from 42 countries, and they're still coming in thick and fast. So I don't know if Valeria or Katrin want to add to that, but
I think, Valeria, you had something to say about the agenda is to find questions. Is that right?
Yeah, the one thing that I've been impressed with is, everybody kind of took Siamack's call and said, hey, I would love to contribute. I would love to participate in whatever fashion. Like, I'm not a qualitative research, but I've done qualitative research. And so I said, hey, I can learn more, but I can also help others. I can help others with the things that I can do. So that's, that's how we jumped in. And what appealed to me and some of the other people I've talked to from all over the world who are participating more actively, and we've got a Slack group where we interact, is they love the depth of what we're doing. It feels different. Now, I've looked at other reports that are out in the market, because as a strategist, I've always done that. And I just haven't seen, mind you, I'm looking at the results, right? But I haven't seen that level of depth and that level of connection with the project, even, large scale projects. And in a way, when I'm looking at the takeaways, I'm thinking, well, these feel like things that we're already developing. They don't feel like new things to me.
Yeah.
I mean, if I can just chip in there, one of the things that is also setting us apart is we don't have a company. We are not corporate. We don't have, therefore, corporate aims or goals. And in a way, this enables us to go to a lot more depth. We don't have to satisfy any clients, and we don't have to come up with suggestions on how to turn this into an asset for any brand very quickly. So we can afford to dig deeper because of that.
Have the clients who've been involved enjoyed being on the other side of the fence, do you think? Have you had any feedback?
Well, I have talked, oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Valeria. Go ahead, please.
No, so the client side people I've talked to were thrilled, because they knew they wanted eyes on the ground and ears on the ground. They wanted to participate personally and provide their own report. And they were thrilled that they could, collaborate with us, because again, their budgets were cut, but they knew that they needed to move with the crisis, with the pandemic, in order to understand what was happening.
I think the other thing is that we're all working off a level playing field, and we don't even know if we're working with a client-side person or an agency-side person unless we ask them. And remember, we're sort of on Slack, about 100 of us now, from how many countries, guys? But I know it's running 24/7 across 7 time zones. I wake up in the morning and people have been doing work on the channel that produce new stuff, and then by the time I go to bed, there's another team waking up somewhere else. It is absolutely incredible. I have never experienced. I'm 55 years old, 24 years, 30 years in doing working, if you like, offline, online, home and office, and this is just amazing.
Yeah, I love the cyclic nature of our work. We, some people work to a point and then they go to bed, and us pick up from where they left off. It's amazing. It's just happening organically. Yeah.
So the question that everybody is interested in, what are the main themes that are coming out of it? And I know you never meant to sort of distribute them. It was all going to be internal to the people who actually participated. But I know you've got some interesting ones in there. So take it in turns.
Yes. So a big thing is uncertainty and how people are dealing with uncertainty, and that's showing up in different themes. It's showing up. I've seen it very deeply in the trust piece, which is, kind of the the whole conversation around mainstream media and governments and what's happening, at the official level, but also what's happening at the local level and hyper-local level, and how people are now joining like little networks that were available before, but they kind of overlooked them and didn't like them because they wanted to help their neighbors. And so, they joined those. And then how, unusual organizations started helping, like, the mafia or, kind of the drug dealers in Latin America. So we are seeing that in pockets of the world. So that to me was interesting. They are helping, absolutely, with food, with resources, absolutely.
Is that a way of easing the wheels for when we come out? Sorry, being very cynical.
Well, I can't read their motivations. But...
True. There's a difference. There's two types of help that we're seeing. One is you help somebody in a way that you can be sure will come back on you in some way, will benefit you. And the other one is the purest form of altruism where you don't expect anything in return for the help that you're giving. And people are, identifying the two types of help. And so that's coming through really strongly as well. And it's amazing how many commercial organizations are helping in a way that they don't expect anything to come back on themselves, but it will.
So you also mentioned retraining, I think, and I'm interested in how much of that there is going on and what you think might stick at the other end.
Is that for me? Who's that for?
That could be from Katrin, I think you mentioned it earlier, or it could have been Valeria. I can't remember which one.
Okay, I'm not sure I understood the question.
That people in the midst of this are retraining or looking at retraining because of this period of uncertainty and what it's done to their perception of what is viable in terms of career. Or that's how I took it. And I'm just wondering how many of them will continue, with whether there'll be more of this given downturns around the world.
So this is for employees, for the working population.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, what we've seen is that people certainly discover that things can be done differently in positive and in negative ways. And that suddenly companies make things possible, companies accept a working mode that maybe wasn't acceptable before. And there's a lot of the themes that we found actually deal with this new reality of working from home, collision of different worlds that were separate before, and what that means for people. And people also reevaluate. They take it as a phase for reevaluating of what is actually the kind of person that I want to be, and what's the kind of way of life that I want to have. And we've seen a lot of positivity, a lot of hope on a very individual level, where people say, well, actually, in a way, this crisis can, on a personal level, make me a more rounded, better person. It gives me a time to step back and reevaluate my whole life. And that gives them a sense of control, I think. Yeah.
Sorry, just to build on that, I guess the overarching thing could be moving forward. Am I going to put all my eggs into one basket, i.e., one job, one profession, one source of income, or the rest? Because it's now quite clear that you're taking a risk if you have one job, because you could lose it and you have nothing else. If you can just do one thing, that's it. You're stuck there. So I wonder how that's going to pan out.
Yes, I mean, what we definitely saw in the research is that it has really made people realize that the security that in many parts of the world, not in all parts of the world, but in many parts of the world, people have taken for granted and have lived by, can vanish very quickly. And I think this is a trigger for this reevaluation, for a kind of radical reevaluation as well, that also then, you know, turns into some radical modes of behavior, trying out things.
I've got down in my notes sort of hope versus non-hope for the future, and
yes.
lack of positivity about what will happen in the future. So yes. How did that come out?
I think what we saw in some of the answers is that actually people didn't feel very positive about the future as a whole. There was a lot of anxiety, and it's natural that there is a lot of anxiety because nobody really knows what will be tomorrow, how we will all come out of this. So the positivity really related to their individual level. So I can become a better person by myself, but there wasn't a lot of hope about the future. We didn't hear a lot of voices saying, you know, at some point this will all be over and we'll go back to normal. It's like all this talk about the new normal, you know, we saw that too.
Is this something that's going to be covered in phase 2, do you think? More to do with how people are evolving and their perceptions?
Well, we're certainly going to return to some of the participants in phase 2. We're working on this. We've just finalized the topics actually, but we're now emerging from the lockdown to varying degrees, and we'll be exploring that in how people are managing that, what they're going to be returning to, what they think they're going to be returning to, versus what they actually end up returning to. So yes.
We were talking about little difference between countries in terms of responses, and that's fairly common, you reckon, or are there sort of peaks and troughs in there or differences? I think Valeria, you were bringing out some differences.
Well, we definitely saw some cultural differences and differences in the environment or in the context as people were responding to what their governments were doing and how the pandemic was, you know, the government in general faced the pandemic. So that definitely had some weight. But what's interesting is that the deeper we got on the individual level, those differences sort of went away a little bit. And the culture came in as to how people, the kind of rituals that people were gravitating towards in order to quell the anxiety and, you know, kind of make themselves whole again. And, you know, care for their families and care for their communities versus, you know, kind of the you know, what's happening out there. And so, you know, more humanity dealing with things across the world, but then the differences where I saw them in the research, the cultural differences came in, you know, kind of at how they were, the kind of things that people were doing.
Can you give me some instances?
So Italy, you know, turned to, and this was in the news a lot as well, but it turned to art and singing and playing. I mean, I've seen young talent, old talent, people playing the violin, tenors singing from the balconies in Florence and in Venice. You know, that was amazing, but also everyday people. But I've also seen German villages, you know, sitting on their balconies and singing Bella Ciao, which is a song of Italian resistance. In Italian, they distributed to their neighbors the paper in Italian, and they were singing with this German accent. So I felt, you know, I wanted to hug them all, you know, metaphorically, obviously, virtually, for doing that. But, you know, I felt that, you know, people were finally kind of seeing beyond the cultural differences and seeing the common humanity because everybody was facing the same issues.
A situation like this, a global pandemic that we're in, strips everything else away to us. We're fundamentally humans, and we are in the same boat for the first time in a very, very long time. So really interesting things are going to come through simply on that alone, because of that alone.
How has the interaction been between so many researchers who don't actually know each other? I mean, it must be a really strange environment.
Can I just say that nobody knows how good or how senior and how important I am in the research world on Slack. So they give me a good telling off, and I've had people come in on my workshops that we've had saying, this isn't how you run a workshop, Siamack. and saying, I'm not going to pull you out of this workshop, but this is not how you do it. And final things warning. Like that. So I've really been cut down to size. And it's a complete sort of, I mean, I was being, I was joking, obviously, but, and I am serious though. I did really get told off a couple of times by a few people. And it's a function of suddenly I'm not on my own anymore. I can't just do my own thing. I've got people all around me seeing my thinking and my output. And we're all in the same boat. So
I suppose there are two elements to this. One is, okay, you're all on the same level, but also there is no leader. So how does that work out?
Well, that's been very interesting, because early on we established Slack as a way to communicate with each other. And I think the first day we had like 7 people on Slack. And now, as Siamack said, it's over 100 or close to 100. Basically, the way that we work together is very simple, because whoever is interested enough, whoever has capacities and is passionate about a certain theme or a topic or a task simply takes it and runs with it. And it's been a very illuminating experience to be part of that, because in a way it's almost like a self-organizing beehive. Everybody's working.
Absolutely.
Everybody's on the same level, as Siamack said, which is, very interesting experience for all of us, I think. And we've had several workshops. One was across, I think, 14 time zones. Was really interesting to do. Not everybody is interested in doing the same amount of work or able, but then other people pick up. And we established a way of working together where we're really very honest with each other, I think. And early on, somebody said, we come from so many cultures, we just can't afford not to be direct. Just when somebody wants something happening, or when somebody wants to say something, we just say it, because it wouldn't work otherwise.
How are you going to mold whatever this is going to become into what it's going to become? Who is going to decide on strategy? Are you going to put it to the vote?
We have a steering committee, right? We have a steering committee. There's 12 of us, 11 of us, 12 of us, I can't remember. And it's open. So we are happy for anybody who wants to join. But these people in the committee kind of naturally percolated to the top on their own accord. Nobody asked them to join, or they just took hold of different Slack channels that they were interested in, different departments, I call them, and they just led them. Whether it was sense making, whether it was by regional sense making, whether it was coming up with privacy and ethics, whether it was we even have an area for students on internships who join, and we give them jobs to do. It's like a proper office. We've got a waiting room for people who join and don't know what to do next. Okay, wait there, we'll come and get you. What are you good at? And I don't know how many channels we have yet, guys, by now, but we have quite a few. And in fact, one of us has been cutting them down and grouping them, merging them, because we came up with so many at the start.
And that's the thing I wanted to add is, people gravitated towards the things they wanted to do, but also I think we're honest with ourselves and with each other, and we are taking on the jobs where we have capabilities that we can apply to and so in some cases it's a mix, right, of I have the capabilities and I can do this, and I have a desire to help, and I have time. And then also people who join and they're honest and they say, I would love to work on this. It's my first time doing it. So, kind of let's collaborate and let's figure out. As I was working on these themes, I was working with a lady who has strength in community management, and so that, to me, that was exceptional. And then another lady in a completely different time zone who has strength in qualitative research and has a particular sensitivity to capturing verbatims, to kind of getting into the fabric of what people are saying and visualizing information. So it's been fascinating. And again, we collaborate, we go in, we put comments, and then we have a discussion.
What is really important, Louella, not to be forgotten, is none of us are getting paid. No one here is getting paid for their time or their effort or their passion. And I sometimes listen in, when I'm involved in a call and I hear somebody very passionately explaining that, we need to up the standard, or the quality isn't quite right on some of these reports, and because we've got a total mixed bag of reports, right? So what do we extract from which reports and how do we put them together? And I think we're not even paying you. If you're in a full-time job, you've got other projects. You're not one of those people who's lost the project. And yet you've kind of rolled up your sleeves and moved into this like it's your own house. So I find that quite humbling, actually.
So do you think this is the future of qualitative research or market research generally? Who fancies tackling that one?
I think it's an interesting model. I think it's something that a lot of people will or should be watching very closely, because it's a totally new way of working together. I always say it's like a punk project. It's completely new, and I think it opens a lot of avenues, this collaborative spirit, because as Siamack said, people are intrinsically motivated to contribute. There's no kind of personal agenda. I can't become anything in this. There's no department I can take over. I can't apply for a raise or anything like that. But people just want to be part of this, and they also take it as an opportunity to learn for themselves, to try out things in a relatively safe environment, try out new roles, and then step back from it without losing face and saying, look, apparently this isn't really my strength, or I can't do this. Can somebody else take over?
Sorry, Louella, but I think that's different because we've seen open source models, right? And open source projects. In science, we've seen that, right? There is like a big network that has been active on COVID, like 3,000 plus people have been actively researching from different pieces. Technology is notorious for having the open source projects, etc. But I think what Katrin just said, the trying out new roles and trying new things, this is not something that typically the sciences do. And what's interesting to me is that I consider qualitative research also science. There's a lot of science involved, and I'm working with the semiotictions, with anthropologists, with people who've actually studied a long time to get there. I'm a linguist by training, but I went into kind of a little bit of a different. So this ability this flexibility to try out new roles and expand capability is not something that I've seen in other open source networks.
So if you had a client who approaches you and said, "I'm into scenario planning at the moment, but I'd be really interested to see if any of your findings could help me with what I'm doing, what reply would you give them?
I know what reply I'd give them is go do an interview, submit a report, and then you can look at the data. And then you can commission anybody you want to do a project with you. You can use one of us. And I myself, by the way, put my hands up and said I will never ever commercially gain from this initiative, because that's my that's my promise that I've made to myself and everybody else. But that's how it works. It's for us. We're not trying to get clients interested in our work. This is for the benefit of us as a community of people. But if they approach us and they want to do something, well, there's a way of coming on board and taking advantage of the data.
We've got one question, which is it too late to submit an interview for this wave? Interview has been done but not submitted yet.
No, you can submit it.
Please submit.
Yes, do submit. We've got 330 of them now, but we are going into phase 2 very quickly. So if you wait a few days, we'll give you the phase 2 topics as well.
Hang on a minute. Somebody put their hand up and now I can't find out who.
It's anonymous.
Mm. No, I've lost it. No, we've done that one. Are there any more questions, please? Because if not, I will thank the kindly panel for coming. And, ooh.
There's a question here.
How is your penetration, ooh, that could be nasty, in Africa? This is a wonderful initiative, well done. What's your penetration like in Africa, please?
With some researchers in Africa, actually, and told them about the initiative. I don't know if we've had any reports or if they've signed up, but I have been talking to some who've approached me on LinkedIn.
Africa is probably our weakest continent. We've got quite a few interviews from South Africa. We've got a couple from East Africa, but that is it. So, and it's a real shame, and it's something that we're going to try and remedy in this phase 2.
Okay. Any more for any more, please? Oh. Okay. Yanni says he or she would do their best to help.
That's great. Thank you.
Okay. Yes. Any more for any more? Otherwise, I will say thank you. It's been a real pleasure. So thank you very much for coming along. This is only one of the many initiatives that AQR has been running. We've got another one coming up in the near future. We're just about to announce it, details. But go and have a look on AQR's website, which is www.aqr.org.uk, for the latest things that we've got coming. Oh, and hang on a minute, we've got some more questions coming up. No, we've done that one. And Simon, who are interviewing? Simon, would you like to, I'm not quite sure. Simon, do you mean who are the people interviewing?
Or who are we interviewing? People
volunteer to interview whoever they want. Sorry, I'm taking over. Would one of you like to just describe the process very briefly?
Well, I wanted it to be originally a friend of a friend of a friend, so somebody you don't know directly. And but nobody followed that rule, of course. People were interviewing their mums, their cousins, as well as their friends of friends of friends, so for complete strangers. But it's all voluntary, absolutely. Nobody's getting paid. Everybody is consenting to be interviewed. And it did create a bit of a, it's actually, I'll tell you what the more interesting question here is. It created a bit of a headache when it came to privacy and ethics, especially GDPR compliance, because we had reports coming in with photographs of the participants on them, and their email addresses from countries like India. And we immediately had to delete the images and all the personally identifiable information that came with it. And so we've been through quite a lot of hoops, and we're just getting our heads around all of the issues of getting reports from 42 countries, some of which fall under GDPR, many others don't. So each of them is a kind of law unto themselves, so we're having to sort all of that out. But
in general, yeah, as a process, people go on noteverydaylife.com and they can choose to participate, the level of participation. We have people sign up to be interviewed, to, for somebody to call them, and then we put we put the list of countries on Slack, and people kind of raise their hands and say, hey, I can talk to somebody in the US, I can talk to somebody in Italy, and so on and so forth. And we just make the connection that way as well.
Hopefully, Simon, that's okay. Right, in that case, I leave you free to enjoy the beautiful day. Well, I hope it's beautiful where you are.
It is.
Yes.
Good. And thank you. Right.
Thank you
I
very
shall
much.
turn you off.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.